The Shayan Show.
Hello, everybody. I'm here with my special friend, Liam, and I'm excited to have him on the show. Liam, how are you?
Hi, everybody. Hi, Shayan. How you doing?
Great. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me on such an eventful day in the news cycle.
I know, it is very eventful. It's some big things happening. I actually originally recorded a podcast yesterday with a friend of mine, and we covered some news stories. But once I saw this news hit the scene, I was like, I gotta redo the podcast and release that later. So why don't you tell us what's going on?
I hear you. Well, yesterday, actually 2 days ago now, Trump, the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, was indicted on campaign finance charges. We'll go over what he did and what he was indicted for. So basically what happened is when Trump was running for president in 2016, he decided that he wanted to tie up some loose ends. Trump had slept with a number of women over the years, cheated on his wife with them, some of them porn stars, some of them Playboy bunnies. And these women had tried to go sell their stories before he actually ran for president, especially Stormy Daniels. Stormy Daniels had tried to go to, TMZ and these media outlets, try to sell her story to be like, hey, I had sex with Donald Trump. And nobody really cared back then because Trump was, the host of The Apprentice, and everybody kind of knew he was a womanizer, a ladies' man. So the stories weren't worth much. But then when he decided to run for president, he knew that those kinds of things could really hurt him in the eyes of the voters. So what he decided to do, he went to see his lawyer, who at the time was Michael Cohen, and he said, hey, can we pay off this woman, Stormy Daniels, and the other woman, what's her name, McDavid or something? I forget the other woman's name. She's the Playboy bunny. The charges are after these two women, but people seem to only talk about Stormy Daniels because she's the one that we remember. Regardless, they decided that they were going to give money to this woman, and the way they did it is Michael Cohen himself wrote her a check for $130,000 to silence her. So not a lot of money when you think about it, with how much money Trump has and how much money these elections and things are worth. But he paid her off. He gave her this money. Now the problem is that could be considered a donation to Trump's campaign, $130,000, since he's giving it, from Trump to this woman. It's kind of considered a donation. And that is way over the amount that you're allowed to give to a political candidate. So it actually violates federal campaign finance laws. Can you explain why that's a donation, though? Because it's not going to Trump. It's Trump paying someone else. Right, but let's say you went out to dinner at a restaurant and you were running for president, and you ran up a bill of you had drinks, you had steaks, and you ran up a bill of $1,000, and then you left, and I went in and I paid your tab at the dinner. That's since even though I'm not paying you, I'm paying off one of your debts. It's kind of like I'm donating to you, right? So it's the same idea here.
So Michael Cohen donated this sum, is what you're saying?
Correct. He donated $130,000 to Trump. Now, the reason why everybody is saying this is a weak case, you've probably heard that a lot, right? Oh, they're bringing this charge. It's a weak charge. This is a weak case. The reason for that is because what they have to prove, what the DA is going to have to prove here, is that Trump paid off this woman, Stormy Daniels, because he was running for president. Right? Because he was running for president and he would worry that it would hurt him as candidate Trump. Because if Trump paid off Stormy Daniels just because, he thought it would be bad for his personal brand, then it's not considered a campaign donation. Then it would just be Michael Cohen saying, Trump, you're my good friend. This could cause you some trouble. I'm going to pay off this porn star for you to keep her quiet. Then it's not illegal. It's only illegal if Trump did it because he thought he would hurt his campaign, and then it makes it a campaign expense, and then Michael Cohen paying it for Trump makes it a campaign donation, which makes it illegal. And that's going to be very hard for them to prove because you have to go inside Trump's head, and this is what they call a state of mind. What they have to prove is his state of mind. They have to prove, no, you didn't pay her off to protect your Donald Trump image. You paid it off to protect your Donald Trump as a candidate image, right? And that's very hard to prove.
Well, I mean, the whole thing happened in 2006, right? But we're talking apparently she got paid later on, is what
exactly, and that's what they're going to use to prove it, because they're going to say, hey, look, if you wanted to pay her off as the man Donald Trump to protect your image, you would have paid her off back in 2006. Why did you wait until 2016 when you were running for president? And the truth is, that is probably why Trump paid her off, because he was running for president. Because Trump slept with a lot of women over the years. I'm sure he didn't pay them all $130,000 every time he would have sex with somebody, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I mean, the fact that you said, I didn't really understand the whole thing until you said the donations thing, that you made it very clear. But just some things that I want to also cover, some points, is that apparently in 2018, Michael Cohen's own lawyer said that Cohen had paid for it personally without any instruction from Trump. So if he paid it personally, that's without instruction from Trump, then that wouldn't be considered a donation, would it? Because after the fact, Cohen claimed otherwise.
I think it still might be considered a donation. I don't think you're allowed to give money to these people, even if you say, oh, they never asked me to do it. I still think it would be considered a donation. I don't think that's necessarily the argument that they're going to take. Now, Michael Cohen, I don't know if you know this, is in prison right now. He's in prison for committing perjury. So he lied to Congress. So that's going to be one of the points that's going to help the Trump campaign, is they're going to say, look, this guy is not a reliable witness. Michael Cohen has lied before, and how do we know that he's not lying now about the terms of this agreement?
I mean, neither is Stormy Daniels on her front. I mean, we all remember the Michael Avenatti, that lawyer, the porn star lawyer. Everyone used to make fun of him. He's also in jail now for fraud.
Right. Well, he defrauded his client, Stormy Daniels, right? He stole money from her.
Yeah.
I think about your earlier point, maybe it wouldn't be, because if Trump really had no knowledge of it, then I guess he couldn't be held accountable for it. But the idea that Trump didn't know about this is clearly BS.
Yeah, well, the argument is that what Michael Cohen did is like, Trump was probably like, get this out of the way. I want to run for president. Take care of this for me. And Michael Cohen probably, he's like, he didn't want to go through all the process. So he's like, okay, so it's just better to pay her than to go through all these legal stuff. And I mean, he just probably invoiced Trump, for the amount plus what he paid Stormy Daniels. That's what I think maybe could have happened.
Right.
But essentially, just to reiterate this for people, this is all about hush money to porn star. And businesses do this all the time. It's called an NDA, right? Non-disclosure agreement. And the fact that that this is what's going to take down Trump is kind of mind-boggling, because apparently this guy, the DA Alvin Bragg, was handpicked by George Soros, who also controls over 2,000 DAs around the United States. And his whole campaign was that he was going to, try to indict Trump. So he was running for DA just to do this. So it's 100% politically motivated. And people are trying to say, no, well, listen, if Trump did actually something criminal, then he should be held accountable. I agree. Everyone should be held accountable if they do something criminal. But we can't turn a blind eye on, all the past unlawful things that previous presidents have done, which they haven't been charged for. We'll get more into that. But you brought up the political motivated point. Quinnipiac did a poll recently, and they said, do you think the Manhattan DA's case involving former President Trump is mainly motivated by politics or motivated by upholding the law? 62% of Americans think that it's motivated by politics. Only 30% of Americans believe that it's motivated by the law. So, those aren't great numbers. I think a lot of people think that this is politically motivated. I think even people on the left think it's politically motivated. But from talking to Democrats, even just recently in the past couple of days, what their point seems to be is, well, Trump has committed so many crimes that I know that this one is a weak crime, and I know that, I'm surprised that this is what he's going to go down for, but if this is what it takes, that's fine. He's done so much, he's committed so many crimes that, whatever they commit him for, he belongs in jail. That seems to be the argument over on the left. Now, you bring up this fact that Alvin Bragg, the DA, is a Democrat, and this is politically motivated and all that stuff. The interesting point here, if we can get into this, in my mind, is I think it is obviously politically motivated, right? Everything comes back to politics. You have Trump being charged with this crime that, like you said, was investigated. District attorneys are supposed to see crime happen, right? Police bring them crimes. They say, look, the FBI, local police department, we found this crime. Now you need to charge this person. Instead,
instead, the way it worked here is a person, look into them with a fine-tooth comb and see if you can come up with any crimes. That's not usually how a district attorney operates. It starts with a crime, and then you find out who committed it and how we can charge it. In this case, it was start with a person and let's find a crime. But with all of that said, the point that's interesting here is if this was politically motivated by Democrats, which angle are they trying to take? Do they want Trump indicted and charged because they want to get him out of the political landscape? They want to say, look, this person can't be the nominee, can't be president because he's been charged with a crime, he's a criminal? Or are they making the same play that they made in 2022 during the midterms? Are they trying to get Trump charged to rile up his base so that Trump will be the nominee because they believe that they can defeat Trump? Right? Which one is it? Are they trying to get him charged so that he's a criminal and he can't run? Or are they charging him to get his base riled up so that people will make him the nominee, he will become the nominee, and Joe Biden can defeat him again like he did last time?
Yeah, I think that they probably want Trump out of the picture. I think they see him as a threat, especially with, the person they picked right now, Joe Biden. No one could say he's a good president, not even a person who's voted for him. I mean, the guy could barely communicate. He's always having these mistakes. He says China instead of Canada. He's not the real president. And the fact that this is the state that the United States is in right now, I think a lot of people would rather have Trump than Joe Biden because, look, he's an asshole, but at least he's in control. He's not being controlled.
I think that's wishful thinking a little bit. I would argue that it's the second part. I think that Democrats want Trump to be the nominee because they believe that they can defeat him. Don't forget, Trump lost to Joe Biden before any of the January 6th, before any of that. People voted Trump out simply because they didn't like the way that he was running the country. They didn't, he took a lot of blame for the pandemic. Whatever the reason was, Joe Biden won that election. The question is, 4 years later, will people who voted for Biden last time turn around and vote for Trump? And if so, why? Why will they change their vote? Because they think that Trump was wrongfully charged with a crime, politically motivated Democrats, and now they want to get them back and vote for Trump. I don't see that happening. You're going to need Biden supporters to flip and vote for Trump, and I don't see that happening.
I think we're just in kind of a different time right now than we were back then. I think institutional trust has gone way lower. Trust in the mainstream media has gotten way lower. And the fact that Trump is kind of like the antithesis of all those things, all those institutions, people are more likely to think, oh, maybe, there's a reason why they're going after this guy. There's a reason why. And I mean, you speak to most people nowadays and you talk about Trump, it depends on who you talk to, obviously, but it's not like he's still Hitler or racist or whatever, because you could dismantle those arguments pretty easily. Out of like 5 minutes of research, like he isn't a racist. He said illegal immigrants, whatever. We don't want to get into that. But the fact is that I think Trump is kind of like Bill Maher was saying it actually the other day. He's like a warrior. He's a guy who said that. Whole thing where they want to get through to you, but they're going to have to get through me. I'm in the way.
Right.
And people like that about him. People like that he's like a guy who can go, to Ohio when there's a huge chemical disaster and talk to people and, go to the McDonald's, order the food and talk to anybody, while Joe Biden is like this guy in his ivory tower who's being led around. We don't know what's going on with Joe Biden, while with Trump, you kind of see everything you get.
Right.
Yeah, he fucked the porn star, but whatever,
Right, but again, you're talking about his base, right? His base is the one who smiles, laughs, and clutches their pearl when he goes and buys the burgers. They love that about him. This is going to rile up his base. But the question is, people who vote. There are people out there who voted for Trump in 2016 against Hillary, but then in 2020 voted for Joe Biden. The question is, are those people going to come back to Trump? That's what he needs them to do. And I see that as a hard sell with everything that's happened, right? I think he really hurt himself with those people. Again, with January 6th. With January 6th, he doubled down with his base. He doubled down with his base.
No, there's only 88,000 people as we speak right now watching CNN.
Right.
No one watches CNN. their trust has gone so low. But when you look at Fox, I think they're in the millions, right? The number one show on television right now is Greg Gutfeld, not fucking the Tonight Show.
Is it really? He's more than Tucker Carlson now?
Okay, no, but I mean Tonight Show. Out of all the comedy shows.
No.
Sorry to interrupt you guys, but I got to tell you about this software called Stream Studio. Stream Studio is the best software I've ever used to make any podcast. And guess what? You don't even have to download it. You can do it from your internet browser, just as easy as that. All you need is an email, and then you'll get a code once you put it in, and then bada bing, bada boom, you can start your own podcast. Liam, my good friend here, why don't you tell us a little bit about Stream Studio and how great it is?
Stream Studio is amazing. It's changing the game. You can become a media company in less than 1 minute.
You can become a media company in less than 1 minute. Content is king nowadays. So if you don't have your own podcast, if you're not speaking, you could just be an individual and you can have an interesting voice. Take advantage of the times we're in, because you can have access to millions of people with your voice, and Stream Studio can be that for you.
In less than 1 minute.
In less than 1 minute.
No, I agree. But again, I'm not talking about specifically what that January 6th maybe wasn't what we thought it was and everything. I'm talking about Trump's behavior. Trump coming out like a baby and saying that he didn't win and it was a big fraud. And I think he burned a lot of bridges, right? Those people that turned around and voted for Joe Biden, when they had voted for him, I think they were like, wow, I think we'd made the right move here, because look at the way he's acting now. I think it would have been different if Trump would have been like, well, you know what? I lost the election. We'll try again in 4 years. The media was able to lie about me and say that the pandemic was all my fault. I did my best. I'll see you all in 4 years. Then he would have been charged with this crime. He would have looked even more like a victim, right? But now his image, I think, is tainted.
I'm not sure. I mean, I personally, I don't know how, because he's been so in the shadows of his Truth Social. We don't know too much. We don't hear too much about him. But this is going to give him a lot of steam. And I think it definitely is going to
give him steam with his base. I worry about DeSantis's...
You worry about him recruiting people, you're saying?
Yeah, I worry about him getting people to come back to his side. Because again, Shayan, what are people worried about? They're worried about their kids. They're worried about the price of gas. They're worried about the price of groceries. Do they really want to get in on this?
Which has all been bad under Biden.
But do they really want to get back in on this thing with the Trump and his being charged? And
I think if Trump runs, it's not just about the character, it's also about what they're saying. If Trump is running on the fact that, look, the past 4 years, it's been terrible for the working class. People can't afford to buy groceries. People can't afford to live their rent day to day. They're working day to day. And, remember me when we were living in, 2016 to 2020. Those were good years, right? And I think a lot of people remember those years. Nowadays, it's tough out there. It's not easy to get by. And I'm sure you know this. People are suffering. And I think the politics and stuff, people are just tired about it. And you tried the Russia witch hunt, and it didn't work. Now people are kind of wised up that, okay, this is just another one of those. Just leave us alone. We don't care about your stupid media semantics. Give us someone who is competent, and that can actually. We're in the Ukraine war too right now. It's not just about the character. It's about what they've done and what they've done through their administration. I think a lot of people, they don't like Trump as a person, but they can all agree that the foreign policy under Trump was probably a little bit better than what it was under Joe Biden right now, because there's billions of dollars being sent to the Ukraine, and the country's falling apart. People are homeless on the street. There needs to be some sort of, when you run for president, when you're giving all these promises and you're saying things are going to be perfect, you need to give back a little bit. It's not just about Joe Biden looks good and he's the mainstream candidate, he's a Democrat, and Trump is scary and he's hiding. It's more about a person's life and how they're living.
Right, but you're giving them, by having Trump as the nominee, you're giving them a lot of ammunition that you wouldn't be giving them if you had DeSantis. If DeSantis is the nominee, they're going to try and say that he's just, actually DeSantis is worse than Trump. DeSantis actually he's worse than Trump, right? They're going to try to do that, but I don't know that the American people are going to buy that. And all of the arguments that you just said are going to play a lot better and are going to be a lot easier from DeSantis, because imagine a debate stage between Biden and DeSantis. He would wipe the floor with him, because what is Biden going to throw at DeSantis? That you're a crazy guy, worse than Trump. I mean, he's been running the state of Florida. So, but with Trump, he's going to throw January 6th at him. He's going to say in his final statement, "Look, folks, remember back to that day, January 6th, when they stormed the Capitol. Is that really what you wanted? You know what I mean?" And that message, whether you believe it or not, is going to play with regular Americans. Now, last night, Trump was at a dinner at Mar-a-Lago. He was kind of doing business as usual. I'd say Trump then stayed up until the early hours, sharing interviews and messages from pundits and politicians. Outraged at the indictment, he said, "So sad" at 2:20 a.m., sharing a poll that suggested a majority of people think the case against him is motivated by politics and not the law. His last post was just before 3 a.m. He suggested that prosecutors should be looking at President Biden's troubled family instead. He tweeted, "Where's Hunter?" at 3 a.m.
It's true.
And then he went to bed, but then got up 4 hours later, and he was back on Truth Social.
Oh my God.
So it looks like he's not getting very much sleep. He's probably worried about this. Now, what's looming with this now, Trump is going to have to go and turn himself in New York. Normally what they would do is they would do an extradition. It would be a warrant for him, and he would be arrested. But, Trump's lawyers have said that they're not going to do any of that. They're going to go to New York. They're going to make this peaceful. Trump's going to turn himself in. But he's going to have to go into that courthouse, and he's going to have to get fingerprints, and there's going to be a mugshot. And that mugshot, just like Elvis Presley's mugshot, is going to become a very...
Pablo Escobar. It's going to be iconic.
It's going to be iconic. That picture is going to be everywhere. And, people who are living through this moment in history, it's going to be everywhere. And
I'm going to buy a T-shirt of that mugshot because Trump is the... I was talking about this yesterday with... Jake, but I feel like, the more and more as time goes on, things are becoming more centralized and you're losing more freedom through, all this internet, the government. And it just feels like, he was one of those last cowboys who was kind of standing in the way of all that. You know what I mean? I'm not saying we're going to live in tyranny and stuff, but on the path we're on right now, it does seem like that's kind of where we're headed, unless people like Trump and other people who speak out, are vocal. But we see the consequences of people like that. Like Andrew Tate, for example. You might not like him as a person, but there was no evidence about what happened, what he was accused about. And they keep extending 30 days in jail, 30 days in jail. It's almost been like 5 months. So it almost seems like a war against people who are loud and vocal. And if they can't censor them because of their base, the next big thing is to throw them in jail and to shut them up. So, it's just... I really, I'm a person who's hopeful for the times ahead, and I'm obviously, this is what I feel like. It's just going to be a war a bit, culturally, or I don't know about like people on the streets or whatever, but he's a fighter, man, and people kind of recognize that, and that mugshot will kind of be symbolic about like, I was the guy who's trying to fight for you guys. And the reason why they have a mugshot is because I fucked a porn star and I try to pay her off to not talk about it, That's where we're at. But I just want to quickly go over some of the stuff that presidents in the past have done that didn't
Well, can I just say one quick thing before you go into that?
Yeah, sure.
I just want to say that living in this time, it's interesting when you look at the historical context, because I always look back at times in history where there were bad people doing things, where there were repressive regimes, and you always say to yourself, like, why were the other people bad? Why did they go along with this stuff that was bad? And it's really hard for you to understand that. But what you see now is that both people on both sides think they're completely right. People on the left think that Donald Trump is a criminal who did a violent insurrection, who lied multiple times, who colluded with Russia, who committed voter fraud, whatever you want to say, all this stuff, and that he belongs in jail, and that if he is not charged and not put in jail, that it's a huge miscarriage of justice. And then on the other side, you have a group of people that think that this man is completely innocent, and that all he's done is fight for Americans, and that this is completely politically motivated. And if he is put in jail, then it's an example of the government tyranny locking up innocent people who go against the government. So what it shows you is that when things are going on at the time, it's more complicated. It's not just right and wrong. We'll have to see who ends up on the right side of history. But for now, both sides think they're correct. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
I agree with you. No, I agree. I totally agree. And just to kind of like go off of that, you talk about history and people in those regimes that become tyrannical and oppressive, it's because originally something was morally correct, and the person, the leader, the whoever became in power kind of rode off of that and said, look, we're going to fix things, we're going to make things better. And if you are in a place of chaos and someone says that and you trust them and they look like they, morally, like Joe Biden, for example, he's just an old man, he cares about a little scooter or corn pop, like he seems innocent enough, right? You're going to give your trust to him. And what ends up happening is there's more and more things that come out and more things they have to censor. And if you go along with it, your whole society just lives a lie. And that's what happened in Russia and China. People just live a lie. They deep down, they know something's not right. And it even goes on to the family level too. People lie to each other. It's society built on lies. But I don't know if you want to add anything to that, or do you want me to go into the?
Yeah, well, I was gonna say I had a friend of mine who went to see this woman at her house. And this poor woman, she had kids, she had grandkids, and because she refused to get vaccinated, her family doesn't want to see her anymore. They won't let her see the grandkids. She's completely isolated, left at home. She used to be part of a golf club. She received a letter from the club saying that she had been expelled because she wasn't vaccinated. None of her friends who she used to, go have lunch with, and none of them want to see her anymore. So this is how these things happen. Now this woman is alone at home and is, completely socially isolated. And that will probably end up killing her, because every study they do about longevity, this is something my mother is studying right now, and she's told me a lot about. Social interaction is what makes you live longer. A smoker and a drinker who has lots of friends and is very social will live to be 95. The guy who is alone in his home will die early. It's been proven. So
I got to go drink and smoke now, I guess,
Well, I mean, ideally you do exercise and you have friends, but social interaction is what humans thrive on, and when you take that away from them, it's just a matter of time.
That's an interesting point. And I mean, like, for that case, like, she isn't necessarily wrong to not want to go through that, the procedure. But and her friends at the time, they weren't wrong for being scared. So it's hard to, like, I think that we just gotta kind of look at forgiveness as an option, and we should, she should be able to forgive them, or they should be able to forgive her.
Well, I've noticed that in our world today, everybody doubles down. I don't know if you've noticed that, but I've noticed recently nobody takes out a slice of humble pie and just says, you know what, I'm sorry,
I'm
let's
wrong.
Move on. Everybody doubles down. We live in a world where everybody doubles down, even when they're wrong. It's just, you see it in parking lots, you see it on social media, you see it between friends. Nobody wants the humble pie. Everybody's doubling down on everything all the time.
Because it looks bad. People think it's going to look bad to look bad. You know what I mean?
Right.
It takes a certain amount of courage to come out and say, I was wrong, that I shouldn't have said that, or, I shouldn't have acted that way.
Exactly.
And we're kind of living in a society.
Even if you're not fully to blame for the thing, maybe the other person should apologize too. But they won't. And do you really want to live with this and have this bother you and have it be a thorn in your back? Just say you're sorry and move on. Who cares? At the end of the day who's right, but nobody's willing to do that. It's all double down.
But that's what I'm saying. Everyone is, like you said, wants to be right. And that's on the political level, but it's also the same thing on an individual level. No one wants to take the risk of being wrong or potentially coming out and, trying to communicate, because we're not communicating. Neither party is communicating. And that's why you see record highs of divorce and people going on Tinder, and there's no sort of, no one wants to have relationships anymore. It's all about like hookup culture. It's because people are so tied up into themselves. It's no longer about the community. Why do you need a community if you could just go online and play games, and you don't have to go outside and meet people? That's why people like that are at the fire station or whatever, the firefighters, whatever, they have kind of that sense of community. But more and more as internet starts getting more advanced, we have to find a way to secure that and not to lose that, because otherwise we're all going to be in our own heads at war at each other's throats,
and looking for happiness instead of through other people and through community and through serving others. we look through, and through responsibility, we look for happiness from within. We think that lying in our bed on our phone, living our true self, somehow we're going to discover happiness. And it doesn't really work that way.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean?
Sorry, what's that?
What do you mean discovering your true self?
Well, I think there's this idea in the world today that
Hold up. Did anyone say Stream Studio? Did you hear that?
I think I did.
Stream Studio? What is Stream Studio?
I don't know, Cheyenne, but I don't have time to talk about it. I need to create a media company, but I only have 1 minute.
Oh, I think you can use Stream Studio.
Stream Studio? But I need to make a media company, and I only have 1 minute.
Well, guess what? You can do that just by going on stream.studio. If you have an email, you could put that in. Bada bing, bada boom, you'll get a code. And then as easy as that, you can make your own media company with content like that in less than a minute.
Wow, Cheyenne, I just did it while you were explaining that. It's amazing.
There you go. It's easy as that. All you have to do is go on stream.studio. Stream is the best way to get big nowadays. I've never seen anything bigger. Twitch, forget it. YouTube, forget it. Stream, I like it. Go live anywhere, from anywhere, today.
That you can, if you live your true self, if you find out who you really are, and you live your authentic true self, that's where you're gonna find happiness. And maybe that's true for some people. And I want everybody to live the way that they want to live. I'm not indicting those people, but what I'm saying is that I think that the way that I've found happiness in my life is mostly through doing work, serving the people around me, spending time with friends and family, serving those people, giving rather than receiving. That's usually where I find the most sense of joy and accomplishment. I don't find it from, going on TikTok, following some weird person and being like, oh, that's who I'm going to be now. And that's my authentic self. And that's how I'm going to find happiness. But why don't you go into your thing that I cut you off from earlier?
What did you cut me off on?
You were going to do a list of presidents or something?
Oh, right. We're kind of far off that, but let's go. Okay, sure. So, yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier about Trump saying, "Where's Hunter?" There's a list of things that previous presidents have done, and I mean, maybe you can argue that, listen, they didn't actually break the law because, they didn't break the law. But let's just talk about some things that might not be morally correct that previous presidents have done compared to paying off a porn star, let's just say. So Hillary Clinton and Obama, this is kind of, I would say, maybe on the same level as the Trump thing. Apparently, they misappropriated election funds in the past. Presidents and their wars, where millions died, the past presidents before Trump, Bush, Obama, the other Bush, they had a lot of wars. They had Iraq, they had Afghanistan, Yemen, Libya, Syria, and millions of civilians died in this war. I mean, maybe hundreds of thousands of civilians, but millions of people died in these wars. And, you can argue that a lot of these wars weren't just. They were war crimes. They were motivated for financial gain. It wasn't motivated to free people of a certain country. It was because of oil or because of different issues there. And, Chinese espionage. There's a bunch of stuff about Joe Biden and the big guy. Give 10% to the big guy that we don't know about. And when I say give 10% to the big guy, I mean there's stuff that in Hunter Biden's laptop that talks about the dealings that happened in China, and apparently there's all these mysterious texts that were being sent back and forth where it was said give 10% to the big guy, and people believe that it's Joe Biden. So no one's investigating that. It wasn't like a Russia hoax thing. There's actually merit to it. The Hunter Biden laptop, I mean, he's doing all these drugs. He's using Obama's credit card, supposedly. He's using, whose money is that? How is he spending all that money? Is that taxpayers' dollars where he's going around on that free ride in Malibu? We all know how much Malibu is. It's expensive. I think his rent was around $20,000 a month, something like that. Crazy. And I mean, those are just some things that come to my head. So I don't know. If you have any thoughts, we could talk about that and then move on to the C-11.
No, let's move to C-11. I don't have anything to add.
Okay. All right. Well, anyways, we're talking about censorship. We're talking about control that the government is slowly having more and more in certain areas. I mean, you're from Florida, so you're a little more protected. But here in Canada, there's some trouble looming. Basically, there's this bill called Bill C-11. Let me look up exactly what it's called. Bill C-11. It's called Copyright Modernization Act. I think that's what it is. That it? What it is? Anyways, but let me explain it to you. So basically, this bill is that the Canadian government wants to make YouTube and internet more patriotic. Basically, that's what they say, because we're watching too many foreign videos, and what we should actually be watching is Canadian videos. But the Canadian videos, here's the catch: it's what the government gets to set the standards about what's good or bad. So they get to decide what is a Canadian video. So essentially, it's going to be a lot harder for us to get information that we want, videos that we normally watch on YouTube or Instagram or the internet, content creators from other countries, because they want to prioritize Canadian content. And this is a sort of regulation that they want to put on, and they can deprioritize videos that they don't see fit. And, they can tell YouTube, big tech, that, look, we don't want this guy to, let's say, for example, Russell Brand or Tucker Carlson, someone like that. They say, we don't want this guy to be like so up on the page. Put him down. You know what I mean? So it's going to all be within the algorithm. I don't know necessarily if those videos are going to be censored, but it's just going to be a lot harder to find them. So it will define internet content as subject to the CRTC. So what is the CRTC? It's the Canadian Radio, Television, and Telecommunications Commission. So we've had them come in before and regulate content from abroad, because they want to promote the CBC, which is what we pay for. $1 billion we pay every year to the CBC, which is a state-funded news network, and they make content. And they want everything to basically be just like that, the CBC. People are pissed because people think it's going to be lead to censorship. And YouTube's against it. They came out and made a video, and that's surprising, right? Big tech is against this. Margaret Atwood is against this, and she's the one who made that show. What's that show in the book? It's the one that's it's like a dystopian show. It's on the tip of my tongue. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. The
woman loved the show.
Yeah.
Mrs. Little, Handmaid's Tale.
Handmaid's Tale. Yep.
She's a leftist, but she thinks this is terrible. So, there's a few people that are actually against this, because the Bloc Québécois, the NDPs, which I call the NPCs, and the Liberals, they all want to have this bill. And the only people that are fighting this is the Conservatives, Poliev. And they're bringing up a petition for people to sign to stop it. And I don't know what's going to happen. The bill apparently has been passed. They're going to bring it to the Senate, and the Senate hopefully is going to either, fully pass it or not. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? If I explained it well enough.
Well, it sounds like the government, this CRT, whatever, this Canadian Regulatory Board, is going to have the ability to shadow ban or promote certain types of content, depending on whether it's Canadian. But again, who sets that standard? Is it going to be all Canadian content, or is it going to be only some Canadian content that they like, that they approve? So I guess it's dangerous. There should be no overarching governing body that's regulating this type of content, when it comes out, where it comes out, that sort of thing, unless it's obscene. And that's the law in the United States, right? So child porn is allowed to be banned. Obscene videos are allowed to be banned. People getting their heads chopped off, that sort of thing. But, simply people talking, sharing political opinions, having discussions, just because the government doesn't like them or doesn't think that they're Canadian enough, I don't think that should be allowed.
100%. And it's like, sure, I care about Canadian content creators, but let it be merit based. If the Canadian content creators are good, I'm a Canadian, I'm a content creator. If my stuff is good, let it, take off on its own merit, not, force people to, not get access to certain other content creators because
Right.
our content's not good enough.
Right.
That's exactly with the production. Have you seen a Canadian TV show? Like, there's very few that are actually good. Trailer
Right.
Park Boys is good. Corner Gas was okay. It wasn't great.
Kim's
And
Convenience.
Kim's Convenience, but it's boring. When you watch it, there's just a feeling of like, ugh, there's no entertainment. Have you ever watched that show, Convenience?
No, I haven't. I don't know what it plays on CBC, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're allowed to joke about in that show. Probably not much,
Yeah, it's like there's no taste to it. There's no
Yeah.
flagrance,
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know, man. It is censorship in a sort of way. It feels like when the FBI was telling Twitter not to, promote right-wing voices, or they're censoring right-wing voices. I feel like that's the same thing is going to happen with the CRTC, because who's in the CRTC? Who gives them power in the CRTC? The Liberal Party does. So
Well,
obviously they're going to
what
do
also is
everything.
dangerous is whenever you give government these types of powers, maybe not now, but someday they end up sort of taking advantage of them.
Yeah.
And you think about that when it came to, in the United States, the vaccine mandate. So vaccine mandates were unconstitutional, but the way the Biden administration did it is they did it through OSHA. OSHA is a regulatory board that protects people in the workplace. So OSHA is the one that comes by on a construction site and says, hey, you're not wearing your hat, you're not wearing your boots, this site is shut down. That's OSHA. They have a lot of, they're in charge. They can shut down a construction site if they think it's dangerous. And they were created, in the early 1900s because it was really dangerous. People didn't give a shit about construction workers. They would send them down in a hole, and then the hole would collapse, or they would have them scaffolding with no harness, and they would fall off buildings. And so there's a good reason why they created that. But then what happens later on, the Biden administration passes this vaccine mandate, and they do it through OSHA. They say, if somebody comes to work and they're not vaccinated, that is making for a dangerous work environment, and therefore we can shut it down and we can stop them from coming to work. So, it's not exactly an apples to apples comparison, but when you give government this ability, today they're taking down content because it's not Canadian enough, but tomorrow they might be taking down content through that law, through those levers of power, even though that's not really the reason why it was taken down. Maybe it was from a Canadian content provider, but, he didn't say the right thing on this issue, and therefore, with this power, we're able to shut down that post, right? So that's what's
100%.
dangerous.
And it's not like American content is like prioritized over Canadian content in the sense of the algorithm. It's more what's more entertaining, what's more cool.
What do people want to watch? Yeah. And let them watch what they want to watch. And if you make a Canadian show that's really funny, that's really good and cool, and people
Trailer
like
Park
it,
Boys?
yeah, it'll become a big hit. People will watch it. It's this idea of like artificially inflating certain things. It's not the way that things should be. You should just let things go in the free market, and things will sort of work themselves out.
I totally agree. And you have to think about who gains more from this. Is it us, the people? Is me? If this bill passes, am I going to gain more by seeing only Canadian content, or is the government going to gain more by making us see the content that they want us to see? You know what I mean?
Right.
So if for example, it kind of ties in with the TikTok ban. The TikTok ban, a lot of people are against it. Even Senator Rand Paul. I'm going to talk about it next week with Jake that I recorded yesterday. But Senator Rand Paul is a Republican, and you think that just because he's a Republican, he doesn't like the CCP and he thinks it's a bad thing. But interestingly enough, he thinks it's a form of censorship because, for example, if you go on Instagram and you look up the protests in France, you'll get jack shit. But if you go on TikTok, you'll see what's going on. So TikTok, you could say, yeah, maybe it is ran by the CCP or they have people in there, but they don't have allegiance to any other government. You know what I mean? So they're not going to try to censor things that are happening in the West. If anything, they want to show you that the West is falling apart.
Right.
So that's good. It's good because I get to see different perspectives of things. I'm not just getting the mainstream media's perspective. And sure, maybe they are promoting content that's not as educational as they are in China. For example, China's TikTok, the people they only get educational stuff, and it's like promotes math, engineering, whatever. Here it's all like degeneracy, like some girl farting, or an animal doing this. You know what I mean? But it's funny. First of all, it's funny. We enjoy the degeneracy. We're a degenerate culture. And secondly, you don't have to watch that if that's not your algorithm.
Right.
Your algorithm could be anything you want it to be. So this whole argument about, my son committed suicide because of TikTok. I feel bad for that person who went up on stage in Congress and testified. But there was something within your son already that TikTok kind of just like a parasite took advantage of. You know what I mean?
And
So
and I don't know that it's TikTok's fault that your son was spending 4 hours a day watching it. Maybe,
It's
you
your job
as
as
the
a
parent
parent.
could have stepped in
Yeah.
at some point and regulated that a little bit too. The other issue that Rand Paul brings up is that he claims that this is unconstitutional, which I believe it is. I don't think the government is allowed to pass a law about one specific company. You can pass a law and say, hey, this type of behavior is illegal, but I don't think you can come out as the government and say, hey, this company is banned. I don't think that the government is allowed to do that. And again, this all comes back to this idea of growing the government gun. The government, think of the government as a big gun, because that's what it is. At the end of the day, the government, any law that they have is enforceable by death, right? If you break this law, the police will come and arrest you. If you try to get away, they will tackle you. If you fight back against them hard enough, they will kill you, right? So all laws are enforced by the power of a gun. And when you do this type of stuff, you're growing the government gun. You're making that gun bigger and bigger and bigger. This bill C-11, whatever, it's growing the power of the government gun, making certain types of speech illegal, suppressing certain types of things, right? You're growing this gun, and you might be okay with that today, NDP, Liberal Party, Bloc Québécois, whoever is voting for this, but maybe when other people are in charge, you won't be okay with it. What happens when the Conservatives are in power and you're trying to share liberal things about climate change, and somehow Aaron O'Toole decides that he's going to ban it because he doesn't like what it's doing to farmers in Saskatoon? You're not always going to like who's in charge. And when you've given them this giant gun, well, now they have the ability to rain down on you with their power that you've given them because you liked who was in charge before. It's this idea, the same thing where they should have shot all the January 6 people. They should have mowed them down, and they should have rounded them all up. And it's like, okay, well, does that go for any protest or just the people that you don't like? And who's going to decide which protests are okay and which ones are bad?
Yeah, for sure. And it, just on a less extreme example, like the government a gun is a very good example, but it's also making the population more immature, more childish, more making the government more of a parent with a whip, I guess you can say, a belt. And the more power you give to the government, the more, I guess, reliant the society becomes on the government. More we're less of an adult the more power we give.
Exactly. It's the same
we
idea
rely
with
on them for
the misinformation thing.
100%.
You can't be the one. You can't be an adult and listen to information that might not be true and decide whether it's true or not. The government needs to ban that information because you can't see it. Because if you see it, then you might think that and think this, and we need to protect you from it. So we're going to ban it before it even touches your eyes. That idea. Are people not adults anymore at all? Does the government have to protect them from every single thing and everything that they might hear?
Just to add on to that, it's like, there's a lot of people, when they're younger, they like communism, they like this and that. And part of it is because they don't want to work. And when you don't want to work, my friend, the result is you become a child. Someone is paying your bills. And if that someone is the government, then guess what? They're going to have more say on your life. So if you really want freedom not to work and stuff, you're going to become more of a slave. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not going to become more free from that.
That's what they say. With power comes responsibility, right? So when you're giving up that power, you're giving up the responsibility. You don't want to be responsible for taking care of yourself, for going to work and earning a living. Well, you're going to give up that power as well with it.
For sure, because you are no longer the person who's in charge of your life. It's the government that's in charge of your life. They get to decide your allowance. They get to decide where you get to live. You know what I mean? The list could go on with the amount of power you give to them. And it's not impossible, folks. It's not impossible. We've seen it happen in China, in Russia, in Cuba, all these countries. It depends on what the label was. It was whether it was morality, communism, Islam. They do this. People human beings will take advantage of the power you give them, and they'll do whatever is in the best interest of themselves, not you, your family. It'll only be what's in the best interest of themselves.
And this idea, what you're talking about here, is as old as the ground we stand on, right? Humans have done this. If you pick a history book from any period of time, 5,000 years ago, 500 years ago, 50 years ago, right? This happens over and over and over and over and over again. And this idea that now it's because it's 2015. Now we're living in the future and that doesn't happen anymore. Humans aren't greedy anymore. Humans don't try to take advantage of each other anymore. Of course they still do. We're not past that at all. Not of any stretch of the imagination. So, and back to that agency point, like you see that in Canada with hospitals. You go to the hospital because you have a kidney stone and you have to sit in a bed in the middle of a hallway or in a chair in a hallway for 5 hours. And the idea is kind of like, well, it's free. So, shut your mouth and say thank you. Don't complain because it's free, even though it's not free. But that's kind of the idea, right? So as you give up the responsibility, you kind of have to just take what you're given and say thank you because you'd have no other choice. You have no market power.
100%. I mean, the hospital issue, it's like something that I'm kind of back and forth on when I think about it, because a lot of people want, the United States, sometimes it's like you're left on your own, and I mean, part of it is you have to make the money to be taken care of by having an insurance plan like you have and stuff. But, some people say I can't do that because I don't make enough. I can't pay for my dental. It's either one or the other. So it's nice that you don't have to worry as much about that in Canada because there is that safety net. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. And the problem comes in when it's people who can't work, because in the United States, an incentive to work
or don't make enough
is to get health insurance benefits, right, from your employer. More and more Starbucks, even the big ones, Amazon, McDonald's, they offer the benefits, right, the health insurance coverage. And so that's an incentive for people to work, but not everybody can work, and that's where it becomes a problem for the person who can't get a job, who ends up without health insurance. Yeah, of course, we don't want to see anybody, left on their own. But that incentive is somewhat good.
It is good. It's just, I don't know. It's a touchy issue because, I mean, I myself through the hospital, sometimes I've had it good with surgery and stuff when I was younger. And
once you're in, that's what I always say. Once you're in the hospital, they'll take care of you. You'll get very good care. But
that's not to say I had terrible experiences. I didn't have like the last time I got a kidney stone, it was the urologist was telling me to just drink more water and eat less meat. And, he's showing me with his hand. He's like, this is how much meat you have to eat. He's showing me with his hand, like less than your palm.
Right.
And I'm like, look, I like eating meat. I'm not going to stop eating meat because you want this to go away by itself. This is like inside me. I have to do something about it. And, this was during COVID too. So they were not letting anyone in the hospital unless it was very, very serious. So I had to take matters in my own hands and go private. And I know I had the same doctor as your dad, Dr. Jacobson.
Oh, really?
And they got it done. They got it done smoothly. But the fact that I had to pay out of pocket and do that within this own country shows you that something is broken. It's nice to have the system if it works, if they let you in, like you said,
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know. That's basically it.
Yeah, it's tough. I was getting my hair cut the other day. The lady who cuts my hair, she's a Cuban woman named Christina, and she was complaining. She says that when Cubans arrive here from Cuba, the government gives them Medicare, Medicaid, which is government health care, and gives them a cell phone. And she said, when I got here, they didn't give me anything. And I had to go to work, and I had to work for it. And she says, these people, they come here, they give them Medicare, they give them a cell phone, and they don't work. And if they do work, they work for cash. They work under the table. And meanwhile, I work here in my haircut. I pay taxes. I try taking care of my mother. And, I see the way that these people are doing it. So, it's interesting. Even this woman who, makes almost minimum wage cutting hair, who's taking care of her mother, she said that she was voting Republican because she couldn't believe everything that they were giving to these people. And she said that they're spending so much money, and she's worried that Medicare, Medicaid, which is what her mother is covered under to pay for her old people's home and everything. She says that she's worried that that's going to be bankrupt soon because of everything they're paying for. She's like, now they're giving free college to these people, and Medicare is already bankrupt, which it is. So, that's a fair point. I don't know what they're going to do, whether they're going to raise taxes or whether they're going to make cuts. But there are serious problems looming, and I worry that all of these things, just to wrap up here, all of these things, the Trump indictment and, the drag time story hour, and these are all sort of distractions that stop us from making any real progress with the real issues that are affecting working class and middle class people, and I can't help but feel sometimes that, we look at what have we accomplished over the last 10 years. Go watch a campaign speech from 2008 and, when Obama was running, and watch one from 2024, and they're saying the exact same thing. They're promising the exact same things. We have yet to make any progress on anything because, distraction after distraction comes up just to keep us busy and to keep us riled up. And meanwhile, rich keep getting richer, and society doesn't really seem to change or improve for the better. So
that's basically what Klaus Schwab outlined was going to happen in the next few years, which we're living in right now, right? Because the Great Reset in his, the World Economic Forum is saying it's supposed to happen in 2030, which is going to be in 6 years now. 7 years. So they said there's going to be years of turbulence. People are going to be more divided. It's going to be very angry. That's what he said. And in order for the Great Reset to happen, and the 2030 UN Sustainability Agenda, which is all related to climate change, to happen, this was going to be the course. You know what I mean? So this was all well calculated. The advisor to Klaus Schwab, Yuval Harari, I think his name is. He's the guy who wrote *Sapiens*. And it's like sad because I see it. I see exactly, the calculation that they say. Yuval said that there's going to be a class of people called useless eaters. What does that mean? It means he's regarding human beings as useless eaters whose only purpose is going to be to consume video games, drugs, porn, whatever it is. And these people, don't worry, we're going to take care of them, but they're going to be useless eaters. So this whole thing, we're talking about the government getting more power, becoming the parent. And this is all tied into this agenda.
And what is the purpose of the useless eaters in their plan?
Nothing. I don't even know. I don't know. I'm not going to say they're trying to depopulate or whatever. But if they're regarding people as useless eaters, it's like these people aren't going to be employed. They're not going to be giving anything to society. They're just there. You know what I mean? And especially
that's more and more people these days. You meet them and, maybe they went to college, but they studied some stupid major. They speak one language. They don't know anything. They're not skilled at anything. They don't know how to do anything. They don't have any, expertise in any area. They haven't read any books. You know what I mean? There's more and more people that fall into that category. Well, how do you spend your time? What do you do? Well, I play video games, or I watch this show, or I order Uber Eats, I mean,
and look, and I'm not going to shit on those people because it's the way it's designed right now. It's so easy to get into that trap. Right. It happens to me. It happens to you. It happens to the best of us. We'll watch, 2-3 seasons of The Sopranos and realize, what have I been doing with my time? Right. I've been misallocating it. This fat fuck Tony Soprano from 2004 is dead already. Who cares? Exactly. You know what I mean? And that is, we're living this prophecy, which is the useless eaters prophecy by this dickhead from Israel who knows what he's talking about because he's smart and stuff, but doesn't have the best intentions for humanity. It's only it serves to appease the elite.
Yeah.
So you have to ask yourself, as a liberal, as a conservative, are we doing this day-to-day, at each other's throats to progress society, or is it to just give a better world, give a better stage for the elite, and so we're all a slave class, So right. I don't know. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Well, I mean, if I could just wrap it up with one point, I would tell people that my advice, what I've learned in the last couple of years, because like you said, we're all susceptible to, sitting on the couch, watching TV, eating food. That that is going to be constant throughout your life. There is always going to be a force pulling you to sit down and relax. And this is something that this guy went on Joe Rogan. He wrote a book called The War on Art. Did you read that book? Or hear about it, or watch the show?
But I never read it.
Yeah,
his name is Stephen Pressfield.
Right. So he calls it resistance, right? This, you know, you have all these ideas, you have all these things you want to do, you have all these projects, you have all these plans. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start this, and next week and tomorrow and everything. But this resistance, this force dragging you to lay down, go to bed, lie on the couch, go watch porn, go do, you know, you're always going to have that. But the truth that I've learned about life is that that's always going to be there, and you're always going to need to fight it. And, you know, we're all chasing this dream that we're going to be rich and we're not going to have to work and we're going to lay on a beach. But the truth is look at people who do that. They get addicted to drugs, and like Hunter Biden, and they turn rotten, right? The people that are successful are still fighting that resistance and are still inflicting some pain on themselves every day. They're still going to the gym. They're working out. They're trying to learn more, read more, right? You have to have that yin and the yang. You have to have that balance so that you can actually appreciate the good things that you might get later on in your life. So don't think that that's ever going to go away. You're always going to have to fight it. And the people that are trying to sell you on stuff are going to try to get you to give in to that, you know, like to just relax, just take a load off, like give in to the resistance, buy my book. You know what? You don't need to go out and work out and exercise. Buy my ebook on how to get fit, and buy it while you're sitting on your ass, and put your credit card number in, you know? Don't worry.
If you do buy that book, just like, you know, take it and then apply whatever you learned. You know what I mean? It's not like there's a million
right, but
stuff
people
like
won't
that.
do that. They'll just be on to the next thing, buying the next thing, right? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, my advice would be to don't run away from the work, because you'll never avoid it. Run towards it. Find something that you don't, you know, necessarily mind doing, but you're not going to get away from the work. You know, if you're trying to do that, it's a recipe for disaster. You have to run towards it. And you have to do work every day, so that when you do get those times where you're out on the yacht, you're enjoying yourself in the water, you really appreciate them, you really enjoy them.
For sure. And you want to feel like, look, people like to watch TV shows. People like to watch, play video games. It's okay. We're all like that. You know, when GTA 6 comes out, I think everyone's going to buy it.
I'm going to slam it.
We're going to slam it. But it's okay as long as you are not getting sucked into it. Because these things are a form of addiction. And you know what I mean? It's like opening Pandora's box. You can't get sucked into it. You have to be able to be the parent of yourself. You have to be your own parent, because mommy and daddy, you know, they're only in your life so long as they live. So you have to learn those skills and be able to parent yourself. Otherwise, you're going to be a child and you're going to be lost. And when you're lost and a child, you're going to need a parent. And who's going to be that parent? The government, someone else. You know what I mean? There's always going to be that. You know, otherwise you'll end up on the street and you'll have nothing, you know?
Right.
So,
all right, Shayan. Well, thank you. I think it's been a good show. Thanks for having me. I always like to come on when you're discussing American politics. That's my specialty. So
thank you. Yes.
If we get any more developments in the case, I'll come back on if you'll have me.
Awesome. Sounds good.